Hey guys, Karen Marchetti here. It's time for another dual process. This time Jody and I are working on a Tumbler quilt. So I'm going to start and I'm going to share my simple version of what to quilt on this. So I'm going to zoom in just about like that. And I'm going to assume that this is one roll of the quilt. Okay. And for my simple version, I think I'm going to do just an all over. Because usually with Tumbler quilts, it's a bunch of different fabrics. So the all over kind of acts as the cohesive element. It's the quilting that pulls the whole thing together. So I'm just going to put my needle down here. And I'm going to start with a bunch of little swirls. And I'm just putting them anywhere. Doesn't matter what size, some big ones, some small ones. Just filling that space. And you'll see I kind of went over this line a little because if I had stayed just between here and here, it'll start to look a lot like rows, and I don't want that. I want it to look like it's truly meandering all across the quilt. So just fill in lots of little swirls. So that one I'll take down lower, and this one I'll stop short. So you'll see when I come back, I'll fill in that space. I'm going to keep doing this. And then when I get here, I'm going to just put my needle down. And then I'm going to roll the quilt. Okay, so this first row went that way. On this second roll, I'm going to come back. So remember, my needle's still down. So I'm just going to start quilting from here, going the opposite way. Now remember how I left that opening? See how that just tucks right in there? You don't want to keep it completely straight. You want to stagger them ever so slightly. So I'll finish this row out. Whoops, now I kind of got stuck there. So all I do is come around here and bounce right off of that one. I just keep filling up the space as evenly as possible. And I want to aim for right here because, as you guessed it, I'm just going to leave that needle down and roll from there. Leave my needle down, roll the quilt. We're going this way this time. So the needle's already down, and I'm assuming we've already basted the quilt entirely. Just fill in that space with some all over swirls. Okay. Yeah, well, I like the swirls. I mean, they go pretty fast. They look nice. And they travel very easily, I should say. And again, we're aiming for right here. Leave that needle down, roll the quilt, and on your last pass, you're coming back this way. And we're going to end right there. And this, when you're quilting this, I mean, it goes crazy fast. I just like to change, vary the size, not change, but vary the size of the swirls because it just gives it a little more visual interest. But if you need a really quick, fun quilting design, this is it. Just fill all that space in. There it is. Super quick, super fast. Let me shrink this down. So that is my simple version. I hope you enjoy.
Hi everyone, it's Jody. For my simple design for this tumbler quilt, I'm going to do kind of an all over. I mean, it's an all over, but I think it looks a little more organized as opposed to being like normally we would do like a nice open freehand all over. So what I've decided to do, and because I don't really know how big this is, I'm gonna assume that these are medium sized, maybe a 6-7 inch tumbler. And so what I'm gonna do is assume that one pass is, let me get my pen here. I'm gonna assume that one pass is going to be this. So I'm gonna have 2 passes. And because I can reach both of these, what I'm going to do is treat, to kind of mix it up a little bit, let me just kind of explain, I guess, what we're going to do first of all. We're going to use these tumbler shapes as an area, okay? And what we're going to do is we're going to just fill this with a spiral. So to change it up a little bit, as I looked at this, I decided that instead of doing each tumbler shape with a spiral in it, because I have, I can reach 2 rows of these, I thought, well, to make it a little more interesting, why not I'm going to do this as one, this is one, and then I'm going to treat this one as one whole shape. So we'll put a spiral into this one first, we'll move down to here, and then we're going to treat this one as one giant, well, not giant, but one bigger spiral. So what I'm going to do is I probably would start right about here. Now, you could certainly use a ruler if you wanted to do that, but what I like about this is that it's really kind of has an organic feel to it. And because these tumbler patches are so linear and geometric, I like the idea about being kind of a little bit wonky spirals. So I'm going to do kind of a more curvy, rounded corner spiral. So I'm going to start in the middle here, or wherever. You could start anywhere you like. And I'm just going to kind of spiral it and just follow that shape. I'm just going to spiral in until I get to the center, knowing that I need to come down to this one. I'm just going to come straight down here and then start this one. Now, when I get about, you're aiming to come over to this one next. So you want to keep that in mind when you get towards the center, when you need to kind of stop to shoot over here. And then I'm going to treat this as one giant spiral. And I'd be a little not so wobbly, but it's drawing it's kind of hard. So when I get to here, I'm just going to come straight out to the next one. And spiral in. And then up to this one. I'm just going to fill this same way. And you're just going to do this the whole way across. Now, let me stop for 1 second. We're going to shoot over to here. If, let's say, you had a quilt where these tumblers were much larger, or maybe you have a very small throat space, you could do these, each one. You don't have to put this larger one in the in here. You could do them all individually and that would be fine. Or you might choose to do them all individually and treat the two smaller ones also as one. So that's entirely up to you. It kind of, gives you a little room to play with it and kind of make it your own. So again, we're to this one, which we're going to treat as one large spiral. When I get to the center here, I'm just going to shoot over here. Now, if you notice, I'm not worrying at all about the fact that on the first set over here, I came straight down. And if you look at the next big spiral, it goes at an angle. I really want them to be random because, it's kind of a freehand design and, you don't need to worry about it being too perfect, because then if you try to make them all perfect and one is off, it becomes very noticeable. So I kind of like the fact that they're purposely random. I'm just going to fill this big one in. Now, depending on the quilt, when we finish up this first pass, you have the option you might choose to kind of, I'll go out here, sneak down the seam line here and leave your needle in and then advance the quilt. Or you can just, tie off, advance the quilt, and then come on over and start here. Either way, that's personal preference. So I'm going to go ahead and do this next pass the same way. Again, we're going to have the two small ones. One thing to note, you may want to, maybe you like to do the spirals where you spiral into the center and go back out, and you certainly can do that. I just really kind of like the look of it being a lot more random than that. You could also square off your spirals. I like the kind of rounded corners on mine, but that's just what I like. You may like it to look more geometric, although I do feel like, when you have a really angular quilt, it's kind of nice to get some curvy things in there. Might want yours really loose spirals, and you might want yours to be tighter spirals. That's up to you as well. We're almost done here. And this really goes so fast. And it really, I think, has some really great texture to it. Come out, and then these last two. And it's as simple as that. I mean, it really goes fast. And you don't have to stress too much about everything needing to match up or anything. It's just really fun to quilt. So I hope you enjoyed that design, and I will be back with my more complex tumbler design.
Okay, for my complex version, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to rotate the quilt. Okay, I'm going to load it sideways. Can I zoom in? There we go. Because I'm going to make a very linear design, and if I loaded it regular, it wouldn't be as easy. Okay, so I'm going to just take, I'm going to do some ruler work. What I'm going to do is I want to create a little area of relief. So I'm going to use a ruler. But for drawing it, it's not going to be perfectly straight. So I want to create that little area of relief. And it's probably, 3/4 of an inch to an inch, depending. So I did that only on this one side of the tumbler. Now I'm going to sneak down over here, and I'm going to stitch back in the ditch on the next one. Just in the ditch. Sneak back up here. and I'm going to stitch some feathers in here. You can stitch the feathers however you want to. Just stitch those feathers. Stitching feathers is so much prettier than drawing feathers. Just want you to get the idea. So I'm just filling up that space from the line that I drew down to that ditched line. So now I'll sneak down here again, and I'm all going to create another area of relief right there. So I'm going to assume that this is my first roll of the quilt. So then I'm going to sneak down here and ditch this row between the tumblers. And when I come back, I'm just going to do some straight line ruler work to fill that space. And of course it would be straight because we were using a ruler. But for drawing, this is, well, it is what it is. It's going to have to do. So and this, I should say that this space between here has to be less than this space here. So this would probably be 1/4 of an inch to 1/2 an inch. Because if you make it the same, if you make the space between the ruler work the same as this, you're going to lose the effect of it. So it's got to be pretty tight. So let's just say 1/4 of an inch. I'll fill that in. I'm going to roll the quilt. I'm going to assume that this is the second roll. And again, we're going to come down, make that area of relief. Sneak down again. Ditch that seam right there. Now, I'm a little weird. I like one row of feathers to go one way and the next row to go the other way. So instead of starting right here for my feathers, I'm now going to sneak down here, do that next area of relief, and then stitch up here so that my feathers can go this way. And if you want all your feathers going the same way, that's fine. I'm just, I'm going to say it, I'm weird. I like it to be multi-directional. But if you want all your feathers going the same way, you would have just started from there. So, I mean, the feathers, they stitch pretty quick. It's all that ruler work that takes most of the time. Okay, so now I'm going to come down here, over to here, ditch this one, and then go back and fill with the skinny little lines again. And I'm going to fast forward through this, okay, because otherwise we'll be here for hours again. So just filling this in. Okay, so there we have finished quilting it. So let me rotate it around so you can get the effect. Oh, that was 4. So that is the quilted quilt, and of course the stitching would be so much neater than this. So you see you have the feathers. You have the feathers going down, and then you have this area of relief between, and I'm just coloring it in so you can see it better. You have this area of relief here, and then you have all this ruler work, and then the feathers go alternating directions. So there's a lot of texture with this design. I really like this design. I've quilted it before. And I mean, you could, if you wanted to. Oh, I'm gonna have to erase it. Okay, let me erase. You could, if you wanted to. Just need to erase it a little bit. You could draw, when you do your stitching, instead of doing the ditching, if you wanted to include 2 colors, both sides of that seam in your area of relief, you can do that as well. So it all depends on what your choices are and how you want to do it. But I found the easiest way is to just start with the area of relief, do your design, area of relief again. Just like 1 per row instead of having to deal with that seam in the middle. So I hope you enjoyed this version.
Hi everyone, it's Jody again. So for this Tumbler quilt, for my more complex design, it's really not much more complex than the simpler version. The only thing that I would say really kind of just makes it a little more difficult would be the fact that we're going to use a ruler. But I do want you to keep in mind that if you're not someone who loves using rulers, you could do this very easily, the same design, not using a ruler, and instead of doing straight lines, you could just do wavy lines. So we're going to go ahead and get started, and I'm going to assume, as we did on the simple version, that this is kind of our pass that we can reach to, and then we'll consider this bottom portion another pass when we advance the quilt. So let me get rid of these. And what we're going to do, because I'm going to use a ruler, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and grab a tool, a line tool. Let's see if I have it right. Yeah. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and start. And again, I'm assuming the size, I don't know exactly what size these are. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of aim for maybe a 1-inch line. And I'm going to come in approximately an inch, guessing here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start here using my ruler. I'm going to stitch up, over, and down. Then I'm going to travel right here. I'm going to go up, over, and down. At this point, I'm going to travel along the seam, the bottom, in, and then we're going to repeat the same thing. So the kind of cool thing is that because every other tumbler is kind of different in shape, well, you have 2 different ones. I'm going to travel down the seam, again, echo it. So depending, let me travel down here, across the bottom, into this next one. So if these were a very large tumbler, you may want to put more lines going back and forth. That's up to you. You may want your lines to be closer, and that's fine too. It's just going to be, your choice as to how dense you want it quilted. So I'll travel up, over, down, travel up, over, down, travel, 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 and then repeat the same thing for each one of these tumblers. Another option you have, maybe you're working on a quilt that were like solid fabrics where this would really show. You may choose to go in and fill one of these, between 2 lines with some extra design. That's always another option. I'm just going to keep doing this the whole way across. So essentially, it's kind of like an all-over design. It's just not like a flowing design. Now when I get to this other side, get this last one here. Now I'm just going to go ahead and work my way back. So I'm going to go here. Whoop. I go here. I go up. So on every other row, I'm going to alternate the direction. So it's going to kind of add to the effect of like these overlapping tumblers. And then they're changing direction each row. I'm just going to travel down the edge, across the bottom, up, and I'm just going to continue doing this for this row, whole way across. Well, it's a little wonky, but across, in, and just keep working your way across. You really could add a lot more lines too if you wanted to. Maybe you wanted to totally fill it in, not have that open area in the center. Okay, now that we are done with this row, we need to advance the quilt because I now can't reach the other ones. So at this point, I would advance the quilt, and I'm just going to repeat that same thing. So with this one, this row, we're going to go back to doing this direction. So you just want to remember that you want to change direction each row. Go ahead and get the rest of these drawn in. Okay, so now that they're all stitched, you can kind of see the effect, and they would be much straighter when you actually stitch them. It's just always a little tricky when you're drawing on the computer. But I really love the look of it. I mean, it looks like the top row, you know, every row anyway, it looks like one's coming out from under the other. So it really gives you a nice dimensional look. So I hope you guys will give that one a try, and have a good day. Thanks so much for joining us. We hope that you have enjoyed today's designs, and be sure to join us for the next episode of Dual Process.